All right, here we have a Sicha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe about the end of the book of Shemot, Exodus. This Shabbat, we're reading the last chapter in the book of Exodus. And when we do that, we finish a book, so everybody yells out, Chazak, Chazak, Nitchazek, that we should be strengthened, strengthen ourselves, and become strengthened. So this is what this is talking about. Let's go. Yes, their chusam, the siyum b'chusam, the completion and conclusion of the book of Exodus. The last words is b'chol ma'asehem. That God was with the Jews in all of their journeys. Here, let's see, maybe we can impose this on the here. Let's see, maybe we can get a picture of it here. Can we do it? Well, we'll try. Let's see. Those are the last words. Here they are. Here, B'chol Ma'asehem. Can we make this bigger? Let's see. I hope it doesn't come back opposite. Let's see. Yes. See? Right in the end. B'chol Ma'asehem. See? Ki anan Hashem ala mishkan yomam ve'esh tihiyeh laila bo le'nei kol Beit Yisrael B'chol Ma'asehem. There was a cloud and fire accompanying the Jewish people day and night, and in the eyes of all the Jewish people, everybody saw it. The Kol Ma'aseyim in all of their journeys. That's the end of this week's. And then it says Chazak, 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 Chazak. We need Chazak. Yeah. Vibalt, because it's the Inyan from this whole book, is like the Midrash says, Shabu Yatzu Mitzrayim. This was the Jewish people went out from Egypt. They went out from Afela La'ora. They went out from darkness to light. 1 minute. Yes. They went out from darkness to light. It's verständig, so it's understood as the Inyan Yetzia, the going out from darkness to light. This is expressed mainly in the Verter, in the word B'chol Ma'asehem, because everything goes after the end. Right? The beginning of something usually is the introduction to it, and it in some way, the beginning is some way includes what's going to be afterwards, but the end is like the grand finale. You read a book, you don't know what's going to be till the end. The end is like the grand conclusion, what we were working toward. So what we're working toward is B'chol Ma'asehem and all of their journeys. Darpman verstehen, we have to understand what is the shaychas, what's the connection between B'chol Ma'asehem and the going out from darkness to light. Traveling and going from darkness to light, you travel, you go from one place to another. What's the difference? Well, you could be going from one dark place to another dark place. Or from one light place to another light place. What's the connection between going from darkness to light to all the journeys of the Jewish people? Right, the whole book of Exodus is talking about going from darkness when they were in Egypt to light. And here it says all of their journeys. What is this going from darkness to light? We also have to understand the rate from the Dharmata Midrash. What it says in that Midrash is Techil, it's the beginning of this book. It is told about Nidve Yidden and Arois from Israel. The beginning of the book is not talking about how the Jews were in Egypt. The whole book of Exodus is not talking about Exodus, not talking about going out. The book of Shemos, the first chapter of Exodus, the first chapter is called how the Jews went into Egypt. In Bnei Israel, there were Gekumen and Galus, they came into exile. And then it talks about how that from it, the Jews, the chapters which come afterwards, they talk about after how the Jews got. Okay, so the book of Exodus, it says in the Midrash, is talking about how the whole book is talking about going from darkness to light. So the Rebbe says it's not really talking, not the whole book is not talking. First of all, the first chapter of the book.
I'm sure if I had it already, because I have to.
Parshat Parshat Shmot is talking about how the Jews went into Egypt and how they suffered in Egypt. How is it that the whole book is talking about going out of Egypt? We also have to understand what it said in the Midrash that in the beginning of the book, that's what we said. In the beginning of the book, it's taught not about how the Jews went out of Egypt, but how they went into Egypt. So if so, how can we say that the whole entire book is talking about going out of Egypt? Let's say the subject of the book is talking about how bad Egypt was and then how we went out, but that the whole book is not talking about going out. The first chapter is talking about going in. Was men the Vetmen verstehen, we can understand by preceding what it says in B'kol Masehem, right? The book of Exodus finishes with these two words that the Jews saw the miracles of God in all of their journeys. What does it mean, all their journeys? Masehem, journeys, means not like Zer Messias. It doesn't mean only just going, nor the Erter, the places, wo ze haben geroit, the places where they rested. Really, when it talks about their journeys, it's really talking about the campments where they camped. But there's going to be a portion of the Torah called Mas'eh, Mas'eh. The journeys of the Jewish people are not the when they traveled. The journeys are where they were traveling from and where they were traveling to. The main thing was the camps. When they're Lashon Mas'ehim, it's like Rashi says, Lefishim Makom Achaniyah Chazru V'Nasu V'Nikra Kol, because they camped in one place and they left that place to go to the other place. So the main thing is really the places, their goals, the places where they left them, in other words, the places where they camped. And the journeys are just the means to go from one to the other. So therefore it's not understood. Wegen de Chanayos v'shem midbar zogen de Gomorrah kiven shekasiv alpi Hashem yachanuv alpi Hashem yisou, because the camps that they made were determined by God where they were going to camp and where they were going to, the next place where they're going to travel to is the Kavil Andane. It's as though that these places they camped in the desert were permanent places. It's not just like a person decides he changes his job, so he decides he's going to move from Milwaukee to New York because of convenience. These places that the Jewish people traveled in the desert, they didn't have to really stop at all anywhere. They could have just gone straight to the land of Israel. What because God decided that He wanted them to camp in all these places. That was really the reason for all their journeys that they took. So Hain V rof there the pasuk as makomo tachania mit nam masos. If so, how can it be that the places where they camped are called their journeys? It should have been called their encampments. Therefore, was mimakom achania chazru v'naso, only because when they camped, they had to move to the next place. So really, the movement was not set. What was set was the places where they camped, even if they camped there for one day. But because God told them to do it, so it was permanent. It's eternal. Here you see it's written in the Torah. We have to say, as this was the pasuk roofed on the Chanios Masos, the fact that the Torah calls these encampments, it says 42 encampments, it calls them journeys, as is nittar, for it's not because of us is epis gefelt, that something is missing in the encampments. Mitzad them was they seinen begwan bezeichen because the fact that they were only temporary. Nor for cared, exactly the opposite. Therefore, every encampment that they made, the Jewish people made in the desert, is given hagdama to them masa. It must be there that somehow or other the journeys are more important because every encampment that they made was just a preparation for the journey, because they're called journeys. Was nachir, which after it, which comes after the encampment. Ubemele haben the Chanios vermagd in sich nit blois the mile from Chania, therefore they contained in themselves not only the high quality of an encampment that God decided in an Ophram from Keva, also the mile from Masos. There must be something very, very valuable about traveling from one place to the other that's even more valuable than the places that they reached. In other words, somehow or other, the struggle is more important than the achievement. Right? The journey is more important than the arrival. How can this be? Let's see. Is there beer? The explanation is the showing Geret Kamapan, we already spoken many times. As Yidden sein and nit kein Mittel, the Jewish people are not a means oif zu durch. Führen a kavana was ir tachlis besteht in epis andrish. The Jewish people are not existing for some sort of a reason. Nor them tachlis is in zegufa. The purpose is the Jewish people themselves. Different from the whole entire creation. The whole entire creation was in ira line is nitter tachlis. The creation of the world, it contains no how do you what do you call it? Intrinsic meaning. Und wie in is besteht, like it says in Blois Bishvil Yisrael Bishvil Torah, like it says that the world was created for the sake of the Jews and for the sake of the Torah. So to speak, the Jews were not created for any secondary purpose. Something like how God doesn't exist for any secondary purpose. What does this mean? That we should just sit and do nothing? We'll see. Therefore, it's verstandlich. Therefore, it's understood as al derech zeh is as oich benogea to aliyas was Yidden seinen olam, the elevations which Jewish people achieve via state, like it says vayelchel michayel l'chayel, like it says you should go from strength to strength. I remember I went into the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's what he told me: go from strength to strength. That says this means Hagam as Yedem Medrega is a Hakdama Unachana, even though that every level is a preparation and a preface to a Hecher Medrega, to a higher level, was there Yidvet zu Kumen, which a Jew has to arrive at, Speter later, right? We're put into the world like babies. So we have a person is supposed to achieve a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of integrity, more maturity, more, reveal his potential in the world. So if so, it's a constant elevation, right? That's moving. You have to move. You have to keep moving. How can you say that just being there is the ultimate purpose? What does it mean? Is das aber nit an an ofen was the nidriker madrega is nor a misharet to the underinyan. It's not that the previous level was just sort of like a step to a higher level, nor as in them gufa bestate ir tachlis. But wherever a person is, whatever level a person is, that's where he's supposed to be. And the fact that a person is supposed to elevate himself and change himself, that's another thing. That's another thing. In a way, it's even a secondary thing. To appreciate where you are and what you are is more important than appreciating what you can do. Does that make any sense? Let's see. Their birur, this is the fact of the Jewish people. Let's see. Their birur v'zichuch was Yidden ton to oif in Yanim from Veld. The fact of the matter is the achievement, the addition and the blessing the Jewish people bring into everything in the world, by using the world, by using the things in the world for the name of heaven, unafilu ven ze machen from the devorim gashmim gufa a mitzvah, and especially when they make physical things into a commandment, is blois mikan lahaba. These things are only from, we're talking about, let's say, in the future. The ganze Welt is beschaffen zu werden milechatchila, but the world was created in the beginning, nor bichtei, only in order the Jews should use the world to make the world into a dwelling for God. So if so, the world vibalt, aber as the Welt is bloise emtsai, so the world and is only just a means to this. Kommt meloi, so it comes out as there's man on matzav in Welt, there dvar gashmi, it comes into the time and place in world and all the physical things, they are kodam abura. The world has to be fixed up. This is nit mer via hachana. This is only a preparation to the actual preparation, to the refinement. But dugma ve, and like for instance, an inyan is a hachana to a tzveit inyan. Like one thing is a preparation for the other. The world is not complete the way it is. The world has to be fixed up. The world is impermanent. It has to be moved to a different place. Masha'enki Jews, which is not the case to Jews, Vibalt is the tachlis, because the purpose is in Zegufa, because the purpose of the world is that the Jewish people should serve God. And how do they serve God? By using the world. And all the Zainayanim and everything they do is durach dem hiluch. Therefore, by means of the Jews going from strength to strength, then the nidra, the lower level that they're at, bring tzu, a hecher that a Jew that is at a lower level, he doesn't know as much Torah, he doesn't know as much commandments, his personality is not fixed up, he's got a lot of misconceptions, he's whatever, he's got a lot of not good character traits. So that a Jew elevates himself, ver nishalim in, Madrega, bring zu a hecher Madrega, vert nishalim ir tachlis gufa. Das heißt, as der friedeke matzav gufa vert nisale in der hecher Madrega. In other words, what happens? But when a Jew using the world properly, so it could be the potential that he has is revealed. But the reason that he's here is in order for this moment, where he's at every single moment. It's not for the future moment. So it's this moment to use the world and to elevate the world. That's why he's here. So he's not here for like a secondary purpose. A Jew is here because exactly exactly the opposite. The world is here for a secondary purpose, that the Jew should elevate it. When das is der biur, that's what it means when it says that the encampments, when the Jews camped, haben nit bloß der angene Meile, had not only the value of that was the place where a Jew camped, but they oich the Meile from Masaos. They're also called a journey. Why are they called journeys? Well, durch them was memakom achania chazru v'nasau, because they were in a certain place, and that from this when they were in this place, they did a certain thing what they had to do, and from there they moved on. Seine Gufa nis alle gewähren in dem Inyan Masod. So this then elevated the Jews through the journeys that they made. And it was by doing what they were supposed to do in the place where they were and finishing that and getting a higher place. So this elevated the place and this elevated the Jews. But it's not as though that in one place they were missing something. They had a job what to do wherever they were. When they finished that job, then they moved on to another place. But the main thing was not the journey. The main thing was where they were. Nevertheless, it's called the journey. Why? Because by means of being in the place and doing what they're supposed to, that elevated the place and elevated them as well. When Agam is the Aliyah, and even though that actually it comes from when they were journeying, B'shas Masa was noch der Aliyah, and even though that when was the elevation? When was the elevation? When they moved on. Vivalt over as the kavana, the main purpose and the intention was to leave them masa lacharel, because the purpose was to finish the work that they were doing here, and then to move on to a higher place. So therefore, concealment in is showing freer amasa, therefore it's also a journey. Maybe I can give you an example. I think this is the way that I understand this is like, for instance, a movie, right? A movies are very popular things. Movies are very, so if a person, let's say in the middle of the movie, he sees all this action going on and all these things. Okay, nowadays there's certain action movies which have no real plot and no really purpose to them at all. So people just go just for the action. But that's not what we're talking about. Let's talk about a movie that has a plot, right? And at the end of the movie, so you get to the end of the movie, and there were all these interesting things that happened in the course of it, but the whole purpose was really for this plot. So you think, well, one second, was it really for the plot? Usually what happens is after the movie is finished, the main thing is the actor. Oh, this was really good. He really did a good job, right? That was the main thing. They have to choose a good actor. The actor is fitting for the, that was really the main thing. So really the actor, all you're watching is what the actor does in each and every place. But the movie is also very interesting. So it's the same thing. The main thing here in the Jew, this is the Jews. The Jews, they're the actor in the whole thing. And that elevates the whole thing, right? How much money it makes at the box office and all the co-actors and then the scenery and who there's all the other people that get all these credits. But the main thing is really for this main actor. And that's the Jews, where the Jews are at any given time. And there's each and every scene that is in this movie is a necessary step to the end point. And it really ends up to being just one big journey. The whole thing is just one big, but nevertheless, it's called a journey. The whole thing is called a journey from the beginning of the movie to the end. It has to keep moving. But the main thing is really the each and every scene in itself. So the same thing with the Jewish people. The Jewish people are here not for any other reason other than they're here because the Jewish people are godly, and wherever they are, they can use that godliness to serve God. And this, when they finish that, then they move to the next place. But the whole purpose is really for these, if you want to call it elevating, moving, but you have to look at the whole thing in one big picture. And so it ends up that the one big picture is the campments and the movement together. But the stress over here that he wants to say is that by doing what you're supposed to do in the encampment, that this itself makes a movement to the next. That's the whole idea of elevating the world. It says, it says these are the journeys that the Jewish people, when they left Egypt, is their Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe explains, as thus was a state mas a. These are the journeys that the Jewish people took to go out of Egypt. There were not journeys. The Jewish people did not make journeys out of Egypt. The first journey, they left Egypt. After that, they were journeying in the desert. There was only one that took them out of Egypt. What is it? The journeys that they took out of Egypt. Was thus made, it means is that each and every one of these 42 journeys, they were really going out of Egypt. Why? Because now we're talking about not just the physical country of Egypt, even though that the country of Egypt, the physical Egypt, they went immediately in the first journey, then they went from Ramses to Sukkos, but is therefore while kol zaman ze seinen nit gekommen Yarden Yerecho, all the time the Jewish people did not come into Israel, Yarden Yerecho, ze seinen, Jericho was the entrance to Israel, ze seinen ze nor alles gewen in the Bechina from Mitzrayim, because all the time they were in the desert, spiritually, as long as they did not reach the Holy Land, spiritually they were still in Egypt. True, they left out the, what does Egypt mean? Egypt means limitation, the gavul, and boundary, definition. As mit yeder masen, yed is given an inyan from Yetzias Mitzrayim. Every journey they took was going out of spiritual Egypt. And this is continuing now. Just because they got into the land of Israel, we see that that wasn't the end. Therefore, as verstandig understood, is the difference between the journeys and the campments, where they journeyed and when they camped, is bedugmas the chiluk zwischen Galus Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is the difference between being when they were in Egypt and going out of Egypt. Based in the time when they were journeying, wie bald sie seinen durch dem gewen nenter, even though that in fact they were closer to Israel and further from the country of Egypt, In other words, they had gone out of a lot of levels of concealment and a lot of levels of ignorance and being far away from God. That they left all this, they went out of Egypt, but still every journey that they made was still another, it was another going out of Egypt. They achieved what they had to in every journey, and then they had to go to a higher level. As Haben say, gehalten and Royscan from Mitzrayim, but all the time that they didn't really reach the goal, they were still considered to be going out of Egypt. That's the idea of Geula, the future redemption. Or Be'ez is the Chanios, and when they were made the journey, when they made the camp, when they camped, the 42 times they camped in the desert, Venze Haben, Zich Barhalten, when they stopped, or if ein Ort in one place, und gegangen in the Richtung zu Yarden Yerecho, and when they were encamped and they weren't moving in the direction, Hagam as euch done, seinen ze mit jeder Rega, even though that every single second they were closer to the end, right? Closer and also closer in time to see him to the conclusion of Arboim Shana, 40 years, which they had to be in the desert. That was the decree that God made, that they had to be 40 years in the desert after the thing with the spies. As soon when they refused to go into Israel, so God said, you're going to be here for 40 years. Even though at every single journey and every single encampment, they were a little bit closer to Yarden Yerecho, to entering Israel, is over their Inyan from the Chania Gufa. So if so, the idea of when they camped, this was sort of like stopping. In other words, stopping, digesting, whatever, doing the work that they had to do in that campment. But if we look at it, true, they had to do the work, but if we look at it, what was the goal? The goal was to get to the land of Israel. So when they stopped, this was sort of like a temporary a temporary delay from Oroiscan from going out of Egypt, and when they were in the desert, from going out of Egypt, because they were still in this idea of exile, galus. Okay, so now we can understand why the pasuk says that the campments were also called journeys. Why? Deitaran, because it is stressing as their inyan geula, the whole idea of the future redemption, versus da oich bezman chanaya, which was even when they were encamped, is nit blois mitzad dem vos mit yeder reges, not only because that every moment they were closer to Yarden Yerecho, to the total redemption and the going out of all limitations, nor oich mitzad dem in chanaya hagalas atzmo. It means that even when they were in these camps, so what are we saying? All these 42 journeys in the desert, they were essentially in exile. They still had not really left Egypt. It was just a different form of Egypt. But until they arrived in the land of Israel, they still were in some sort of bondage. They still had not really revealed their true potential. So if so, the whole idea of the journeys and the encampments, they're really sort of in the same category. But the encampments are a little bit worse, because the encampments, that's when they stopped. They weren't really making progress toward the land of Israel. Even though they were making progress in the 40 years, because they said that every moment that they were in the desert, they were closer in time to coming into the land of Israel. For room, because Vibalt, as the Kavanah from Galinu Miyatzina, the whole purpose now, let's take now, why were we, the second temple was destroyed, and we were kicked out of the land of Israel. Why? Is to leave the Galut because of the tremendous revelations which the future redemption will bring. So welcher men can nit zukommen durch the andere ofen, which we cannot come to through any other way. Is agam as menoget zum galus gufa is blois hachana, even though that everything is just a preparation. What we're doing now is just a preparation for the future redemption. the ein inyan, like one thing is a preparation for the other. But on the other, regarding the Jews, the fact that we were exiled from the land of Israel itself, this is a way of, etc. This itself is a whole, it's one of the topics of this big movie, which is called Geula, like we said before. In other words, the Jewish people, they're the character, they're the main thing of the movie. So if so, every single step of going out of Egypt, this is part of the redemption. So on one end, you can say, listen, as long as we haven't reached the goal, so that's not redemption. Says the Rebbe, yeah, but really every detail is really an episode in this redemption itself. So the redemption is already here. Alpia now, according to this, now we can understand what the word and all of their journeys, why the book of Exodus ends with these words in all of their journeys. Zayin and der Chosim, this is the finishing of the book of Exodus. Was Kumt La'achre, which comes after the book of Breshit. Breshit is talking about the world. Vues Verdetzelt wegen de Avos. And Breshit is talking about the world, but it's talking about also how Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they defied the world, and they, in some ways, purified the world. The Avos, the Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they were higher from the world. In other words, they were higher from concealment. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they realized the greatness of God, and no one else in the world realized it. No one had any idea what they were talking about. And they acted in a totally different way in the world than everybody else. Their eating was different, their families were different, everything was different. While the Kavane in Dira B'Tachtonim, even though the true God, what does God want? That there should be revealed here in this world. Therefore, what the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did, they were what's called a sign, a helping to us. But it was only a sign. Was they the banim, which us children have been durach geführt, the dazika kavana, that they gave us the power that we could complete the intention that they started, namely to make this world into a holy place. But the fact is, they were above the world. They gave us the power from above to be in the world and to purify it. Undas is their hemshech. That's what it means of the stories. What happened to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. This is the continuation, which are told in the book of Shemot. What happens in the book of Shemot? Also stories. B'tchila, in the beginning, is told the story about how the Jews went down into Egypt. Lamata, how the Jewish people, they came into Egypt, into Mitzrayim, and also about the darkness and the difficulty of the exile. When afterwards it talks about how the revelation of godliness, which was drawn down by means of Moshe below by going out of Egypt. And afterwards it talks about another big revelation, the giving of the Torah. And afterwards it talks about the building of the Mishkan. Is la'achar vi, the pasuk der tzelt. So after it talks about the purpose of all of this and the highest level of elevation, namely that it says the glory of God filled the Mishkan. That's right at the end of this week's Torah portion, the end of the book of exile. So what does it talk about? The Jewish people went down into Egypt. It was terrible. But God took them out. He gave them the Torah. And even the highest thing of all, he made the Mishkan, and God was here permanently in the world. Not everywhere in the world, like it's going to be in the days of the Moshiach, but at least for the first time in history, God was here permanently in the world. That's what it was supposed to have been if Adam hadn't eaten from the tree. It says, "Kavod Hashem malei Mishkan." The glory of God filled the tabernacle. So therefore, it says, "B'kol maseihem." Therefore, it talks about all of their journeys, as that also the places where they camped. They're also called part of the journey, because where they were camping, the whole entire movement of the Jewish people and creation of the Jewish people is just to reveal the importance of now, of what the world really is. So therefore, the whole journeys of the Jewish people was just one big, right? Even the campments where they were camping was just, so to speak, one big, huge journey to reveal the importance of what is the Jews and what is the Torah in the world. In other words, godliness, to reveal God in the world. As Ad der Eloi will angeheuben began in an inner way, noch in der Zman from Haboim Mitzrayim. In other words, the whole book of Exodus is called the book of going from dark to light, because the whole thing is talking about the movement, right now, utilizing the power that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob gave us to make the world a holy place. So the whole entire thing was like one big movement toward this future exile, the future redemption, from the exile to the future redemption. So therefore, the whole thing is one big journey. That's why this book of Shemot ends with the word Bekol Masehem, because even the encampments that they were, and even the coming into Egypt and the suffering was Shebo Yatsu Mi'afela La'ora, in order to take us from darkness to light. So what can we learn from this? That every episode in our lives and every occurrence in our lives, even though it might seem to be a really terrible thing, and God should make it that we never have any terrible things, but every instant in our life and every episode in our lives is really, if we look at in the end of it, it was really just a necessary step. It was a part of this big journey to the future redemption, just as the Jewish people coming into Egypt was part of the journey for them eventually entering into the Holy Land and making the land and the world a holy place. That's why the book of Exodus ends with the words, Bekal Masehem, because all of life is just really an amazing journey to reveal the miraculousness of now, of every moment, and the tremendous potential that every human being in the world has right now. Now let's learn the Yom Yom. In the Shema, before you go to bed, and then before you go to bed, you're supposed to say Shema Yisrael, and there's a whole sort of a prayer you say. It's got other prayers in it with psalms in it. On Shabbat and festival, we don't say Rabbonu Shalom, Olam Natzech, but we do say it on the other days. The Tachnun is not said. After the 3 paragraphs of Shema, we say the word Emet, and etc. It says Vaya'altzu is said once, Hine and Vayavorecha is said 3 times. In Tikkun Chatzos, we don't say Lam Natzech. A lot of people don't say Tikkun Chatzot, but nevertheless. Okay, in other words, this is talking about different laws about how to say the Shema Yisrael prayer in the evening before going to sleep on holidays and other days. From a Sichot, it said a Brit Milah, when a child is circumcised, so everyone says, just as he has entered the covenant, so also may he go into Torah and to get married and to have good deeds. Right? That's what we say. And they say that what does it mean? That just as he went, the child is circumcised, the Jewish child is circumcised, and that makes the stamp of Judaism on him, and he does it totally. He does it totally and above understanding. And so also should a person go into Torah and to marriage and to good deeds above understanding. And then afterwards apply your Torah's understanding. But the attitude should be, this is what God wants. This is what God wants. Torah, the simple meaning is that the same way that this child is being given a circumcision is also he should be a religious Jew, a Jew that learns Torah. He should have a wonderful family, and he should do good deeds. It's just like this is happening now. Also, there should be a blessing that he should learn the Torah and he should get married, have children, and do good deeds in his life. Have a good day. Have a good Shabbat. Shabbat Mavorchin. This is blessing the month of Nisan. It's also Shabbat HaChodesh. We talk about the first commandment God gave to the Jewish people. We learned a little bit about this yesterday. God bless you all. Have a good week with Moshiach now. Shalom uvracha. Shalom uvracha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, Rabbi. Have a good Shabbos.
Oh, Tzvi, wonderful to hear your voice. Wonderful. That's Tzvi Smith. Now I understand, and it's Hebrew. Tzvi Smith.
It's my internet.
Your what?
On my computer.
Yeah.
My internet on my computer is down.
Ah.
So